abstraction has become a very complicated term.
Yeah.
I'm quite admiring of you for taking it on as you seem to be doing.
I kind of insist, yeah.
Have you always felt your work has been abstract in?
No, I think that's early on. I didn't really know how to approach it really. Mm-hmm. I spent a year painting pearls and studying the geometry, and I didn't know how to get into it really, and so there was like a transition, and then I painted installations. So it would be, cutting out little sections of something that then became the work, and then that was the transition from the real to the imagined. But I also felt that there was something in the term that I wanted to go further into and really fully explore and kind of take on the history, how difficult or not it could be, and see what I could make of it, and kind of take the ultimate challenge.
You've had a very rich cultural trajectory in many ways, going from Denmark to New York, back to Denmark.
Yeah.
And probably much more than myself, having been up against the sacred monsters of abstraction out in New York. Is that something you still feel you're?
Yeah, I just wanted to say also about your work that I think it's something that I feel in your work that you have another kind of freedom that kind of avoids the Greenbergian or whatever else dogmas. And I think that this is something that in a way the path that I chose was to go very much into it and then kind of slowly let it go again. In going so much into painting, into the essence, I'm not really thinking so much any longer about Greenberg or anything really about in the.
The radical painting text, Bergen Marioni, that was written in 1986, I think it's trying to come out the other side of that. Well, there was Greenberg on the one hand with the self-sufficiency of painter and then painting, and then you had on the other hand guys like Walter in Germany some years later who were on the contrary saying that it was the potentiality that was important rather than the materiality. Yeah. And I think really Bergen Marioni in that text were in many ways, and it's where it's been relevant to me, and I've sensed the same relevance in your work. It's actually trying to find a sort of ideal marriage of the two, that one doesn't necessarily negate the other, that a work can both be very present in its materiality and have an integrity to its medium. And at the same time, we are inevitably, I mean, painting has always been probably the ideal space of projection, both for the artist but for the spectator. And both Umberg and Marioni, of course, talk about the role of the spectator. That's perhaps been the major shift in the arts over the 20th century, is that recognition and interactivity with the spectator. So, that's...
So, and can I just
sure.
Pick up on that? Because I thought that the role of the spectator is also something that I mean, in this setting, by making the poster, making everything like that, is sort of also, we're doing a play somehow, or it's a performance collage or something. And I think that in that, this play is, one can take on many roles, and we can take turns in who's the one who's kind of directing and take which chapter you should continue reading. That's the one part. But I also wanted, if we look at the poster, somebody who's looking back at you, not directly, but in like similarly, that when we see a work, we're also meeting something, or almost somebody, but anyway, somehow a character. And I wanted to kind of address that as well. Yeah, so it's like a mini Velasquez.
Yeah. But this book, as I said, almost in itself, I mean, this beautiful, beautiful book you've produced, it to me sums up in many ways all that you do, in the sense that it represents a folding out, an openness. It's, as you say, dialogues. It's come about by your conversations and very open conversations with, as you say, very different artists. There is also, as you've said, the element of visual dialogue that I don't think I was actually quite aware of when we were talking, that you were going to be creating something to a certain extent in response to my work. And we'll come back to that in a minute. Yeah. But on the contrary as well, a book is almost classically a folding inwards. It's quite literally something folding inwards. And again, perhaps represents quite perfectly both Deleuze or David Bowman, the notion of time and space and folds and things continuing. I was unaware as well that this place was somewhere that you came from, and that represents, of course, both books, history, time in your story. Yeah. But back to the visuals, how did you find, because as you've just pointed out to me, in some ways the visuals in this book are, yes, a dialogue, but they're a slightly one-way dialogue.
Yeah.
We weren't given the opportunity to respond. Maybe that will come.
Yes. No,
Maybe you will ask us to do that, but it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, yeah.
How did you go about that, or feel the difference with each of the works?
Well, to each of the dialogue, I think I've taken something that I think is kind of particular to each dialogue. And if we are to talk about our dialogues, this is one of the images. I talk about, we talk about the folds and the fabric, yes, and everything, and I thought it's kind of meant to be that part of my practice that is about that should be kind of that dialogue. But I also wanted to give you something with this. Because it's to me, I'm constantly looking for something that could be maybe the essence of abstraction, and I don't know really how you think about that, because I think it's, when we talk about abstraction, it's something in between the real and the imagined, and now by making an object that is kind of real, I put it through a process, a heliographic print. So we never see the whole, which is part of our conversation, and we also never see the object, but we get the light that shines through it, and that is kind of an imprint that I think that is kind of a base in abstraction, that what we can reach for, but we can't really grasp it or hold it. Well,
the etymology of the word abstraction, which in some ways has become a very complicated word because the connotations are so different today. The etymology is quite simply at one remove.
Yeah. I wanted to say also today that we are also writers of art history in time, our time, and it may just be placement of an object or a painting. In a sense, that moment is now, because today we have an audience. So maybe we should just end it there. Thank you.